It was an ordinary afternoon in the small, sleepy town of Willow Creek. The sun draped the streets in warm gold, and the world seemed to move a little slower under its soft light. Officer Thomas Reed sat in his patrol car, sipping lukewarm coffee and lazily observing the sparse traffic that rolled by. The most excitement he usually got at this hour was a jaywalker or an occasional broken taillight. But that day, within the next hour, something would happen that no one at the Willow Creek Police Department would ever forget. At the local market Harper's Grocery, a modest, family-owned store that had served the town for decades, an elderly man shuffled through the automatic doors. His name was Samuel Hart. Wearing a faded army jacket over a plain shirt and jeans, he walked with a noticeable limp, each step deliberate and slightly strained. His gray hair peeked from beneath a well-worn cap, and his weathered hands gripped the handle of a shopping basket. Most folks in town recognized him vaguely, but knew little about him. They knew he lived alone in a small, creaky cabin tucked into the woods about a mile outside the town limits. They assumed he was retired, maybe a carpenter, maybe a mechanic, just another old man living out his final years in peace. Nobody thought much beyond that. He never caused trouble, never asked for help, and never demanded attention. Samuel moved slowly through the aisles, selecting a loaf of rye bread, a bottle of milk, and a can of tomato soup. He smiled kindly at the cashier, a young woman named Kelsey, and waited patiently behind a man in a pressed shirt who was hastily paying for his things. Just as Samuel reached for a small pack of gum near the register, the man ahead of him fumbled, dropping his wallet. It landed on the floor between Samuel's feet. The man glanced back briefly, but instead of retrieving it, he hurried out of the store, seemingly preoccupied with a phone call. Samuel, instinctively and without thinking, bent down and picked up the wallet. He held it in his hand, intending to call after the man. But before he could move, Kelsey's face hardened. "I saw that," she said sharply. Samuel blinked, confused. "Saw what, ma'am?" "You picked up his wallet," she said accusingly. "You took it." "I was just about to," Samuel tried to explain, but she cut him off, reaching under the counter for the store phone. Minutes later, Officer Reed and his partner, Officer Patrick Sanders, arrived. Kelsey pointed straight at Samuel. "That's him. He stole that guy's wallet." The officers didn't ask many questions. Perhaps it was the adrenaline of doing something after a slow afternoon. Perhaps it was the way Samuel looked scruffy, worn, alone. Whatever it was, it clouded their judgment. "Sir, turn around and place your hands behind your back," Officer Sanders commanded, stepping forward with handcuffs ready. Samuel's eyebrows knitted together. "I didn't steal anything. There's been a misunderstanding," he said, his voice low but steady. But the officers were in no mood to listen. They cuffed him roughly, the cold metal biting into his thin wrists, and marched him outside. The parking lot had its usual crowd, mothers with carts, teenagers on their phones, old men leaning on their trucks, and they all paused to watch. Some faces showed concern, others apathy. No one intervened. Back at the station, Officer Sanders roughly tossed Samuel's army jacket onto a bench and locked him into a small, bear-holding cell. "You know," Sanders sneered through the bars, "stealing someone's wallet is a serious crime, old man." Samuel simply sat down quietly on the bench inside the cell. His demeanor was unsettling to the officers. He was too calm, too collected. "There's something off about him," Reed whispered to Sanders, glancing at Samuel through the glass. Sanders snorted. "Yeah, he's probably done this before." As Officer Reed filed the preliminary report, he picked up Samuel's jacket, rifling through the pockets for identification. In one hidden compartment, something unexpected glinted under the fluorescent lights, a heavy, worn metal badge. Reed turned it over in his hand. It bore the symbol of an eagle clutching arrows and a shield. Surrounding it were the words, "United States Special Operations Alpha Clearance Level." Reed frowned. "What the hell is this?" Sanders leaned over, his cocky smirk slipping. "That looks real." Curious and now slightly nervous, they searched Samuel's wallet. There were no credit cards, only a strange military ID, unlike any they had ever seen before, thicker, embossed, and almost metallic. Heart thudding, Reed decided to call the number printed in small, precise type on the back of the card. The line rang once before a crisp, controlled voice answered. "This is Director Evelyn Cross, Federal Bureau of Investigation. Identify yourself." Reed swallowed. Officer Reed, Willow Creek Police Department. We have a man here. Samuel Hart. We arrested him for suspected theft." There was a beat of silence. "Repeat that name," Director Cross said sharply. "Samuel Hart." Another silence. Longer this time. Reed felt cold sweat prickling his scalp. "You arrested Samuel Hart," Cross repeated, her tone deadly serious. "Secure the station immediately. Do not question him. Do not interact with him. A team is en route and will arrive within 30 minutes. Before Reed could ask anything else, the line went dead. He turned to Sanders, who had heard every word on speakerphone. Both men looked at each other, pale and wide-eyed. In a holding cell, Samuel sat serenely, his hands folded over his knees, looking for all the world like he was waiting for a late bus. "You boys might want to brew some coffee," Samuel said lightly, not even looking at them. "It's going to be a long evening." Exactly 30 minutes later, 4 unmarked black SUVs pulled up outside the modest Willow Creek station. Men and women in black suits and tactical gear poured out. Their movements were brisk, efficient, and entirely without wasted motion. One agent, a woman with sharp gray eyes, approached the front desk. "Where is he?" she asked. Reed, swallowing hard, pointed down the hall. The agents moved swiftly. They opened the cell door with a special key, approached Samuel with respectful nods, and one of them extended a hand. "Mr. Hart," the agent said with quiet reverence. "We're deeply sorry for the inconvenience. We'll take you from here." Samuel rose, shook the man's hand firmly, and left with the team as if he were being escorted to a gala, not released from a jail cell. The officers stood frozen, the gravity of their mistake sinking deep. After the convoy disappeared down the road, one agent remained behind. She approached Reed and Sanders with a level, unreadable stare. "You have no idea who you just arrested," she said. They shook their heads mutely. The agent continued, her voice low but edged with something sharp. "Samuel Hart served in 6 classified theaters of war. He was part of operations that never made it to the history books, operations that stopped terrorist plots, overthrew warlords, saved thousands of lives. His file is so deeply buried that most federal agents don't even know it exists." She paused, letting that sink in. "You're lucky," she said finally, "that Mr. Hart is a patient and forgiving man. Another might not have been so kind." And with that, she turned and walked out, leaving the 2 officers standing there, shattered by shame. That night, Reed sat at his desk long after everyone else had gone home, replaying every second at Harper's grocery, the look of confusion on Samuel's face, the rough grip on his arms, the cold clink of the handcuffs. He had not seen a criminal. He had seen a man who had once held the very line between peace and chaos. "I feel like an idiot," Sanders said hollowly. Reed nodded. "We didn't even give him a chance." 1 week later, an envelope arrived at the Willow Creek Police Department. No return address. Inside was a handwritten letter, simple and clear. To Officers Reed and Sanders. "We all make mistakes. What matters is what we learn from them. Stay sharp. Stay humble. Samuel Hart." Attached to the letter was a gleaming military challenge coin, one that few outside elite service had ever seen. It bore the emblem of a classified task force, surrounded by a Latin phrase meaning through silence, freedom. Reed turned the coin over in his hand for a long time, the weight of it heavier than its size. Sometimes he realized the quietest people carry the loudest stories. Sometimes the man you think is invisible is the very person who once protected everything you hold dear. Samuel Hart wasn't just an old man in a faded jacket. He was a sentinel in plain sight. And from that day forward, Reed and Sanders would never ever look at another stranger the same way again.